Have you ever tried to lead a discussion on a work of art or an image but didn't know where to start? Visual thinking strategies, or VTS, could be a helpful technique for facilitating discussions around images. VTS is a technique developed by museum educators at MoMA and is used in object-based education in museums and classrooms throughout the world. So why VTS? It's an incredibly easy technique to learn. It scales well to any age group. It can be used on almost any work of art as well as images, and you can use it on a projection of an image or even a poster. Alright, so before we discuss the steps of VTS, let's take a moment to talk about its history. So on average, a museum visitor will spend only 17 seconds looking at a work of art. That's less than what we're spending on this portion of the video. So with that in mind, museum educators wanted to develop a technique to help encourage students to spend time looking at the art and really engaging with it at a visual level. VTS also aims to build confidence in students so that when they come back to the museum on their own, they'll feel comfortable engaging with the art, viewing it, and discussing it. VTS can also be used outside of museum settings and in almost any subject area. So it can be a wonderful way to engage visual learners in subjects like history, math, and social studies. The first step of VTS is allow your students several seconds to really look at an image. Next, you'll start facilitating discussion with 3 questions. What's going on in this picture? What did you see that makes you say that? And what more can we find? While facilitating a discussion, be sure to paraphrase comments neutrally. So don't say great comment, because no one wants to be the person who says something and doesn't get the great comment response. You also want to point out the area being discussed by students with your hand. This reinforces the connection between what they're saying and what's visually within the image. And also link similar and contrasting ideas as they come up in conversation. So let's practice this a little using this example. So, holding up this image to your class, you ask your group of students, what's going on in this picture? And they might respond, oh, well, it's a band. At which point you can ask, what do you see that makes you say that? And then they might respond, well, I see a group of people and they're all holding instruments. That makes me think of a band. From there, you might consider asking, what more can we find? And a student might mention, oh, hey, the tuba on the left has a really weird look on his face. I think he might be lost. You can paraphrase that by saying, well, based on his expression, you think that he might be lost or confused. And then from here, we would repeat with the same cycle of questions again until you're done talking about the picture. You might be thinking that this sounds a little repetitive. If you're a little confused like our tuba guy, please know that only strict observers of VTS will follow the formula to a T every time. Most educators will take a looser approach. You might consider using VTS as you are introducing a work of art to get your students looking closely and help start a conversation. Maybe you chose a painting because it was very geometric and you're currently talking about shapes in math. So after a few rounds of VTS questions, maybe ask, what shapes can we find in this painting? Steering the conversation towards your goals for the lesson. As you might imagine, VTS translates incredibly well to images. It's a way to get students looking closer at the work and noticing details. So you might consider using VTS in a history lesson by choosing an image that's specific to a time period or a relevant event. VTS can also be used in object-based education, so you can help students go beyond looking at an object as a whole, for example, a tea kettle, to noticing the details about it that might speak to the time period that's from or its involvement in history. So we talked about using great images with VTS, but how are you going to find those images? Well, I've pulled together a couple of sites to help you do just that. Yale Digital Content is a great source for finding images of art as well as historical images. They search several large collections across campus and also offer great filters for narrowing down your search. They also offer a very liberal open access policy for works in the public domain. Library of Congress is also great for finding historic photographs. They often offer larger JPEG and TIFF files that you can download. Flickr is another great source for photographs, and with their Creative Commons license, it's possible to find photographs that you can use for free with a proper photo credit. Alright, so that wraps up this tutorial on VTS. Thanks for watching. Hi, so I am reporting from a poorly lit study room at Odegaard to talk about my experience making an online tutorial. So, just as a bit of reflection, I used the ARCS model to outline my tutorial, starting with attention. I started with an interesting question and as well as some interesting images to capture my audience's attention. I then continued with relevance by talking about different scenarios in which this technique can be used. Um, Following up with confidence by giving step by step instructions, as well as best practices, and following up with an example so we can sort of learn by doing together. And satisfaction was a little bit more difficult with a offsite remote instruction opportunity, but I tried to provide tools that help my viewers succeed, like where to find good images online. I didn't set out to use several different tools for this workshop, but I ended up using a combination of iMovie to pull everything together, PowerPoint slides, images, GarageBand to record voiceovers, although I did experiment with it a little bit with iMovie, Screencast-O-Matic for my online scrolling scenes, going to some websites, Ken Burns effects within iMovie, as well as my webcam. Um, Sort of reflecting on the instruction panel today, I think Dan mentioned something like some librarians just aren't born to perform. I don't think I'm one of them. I would think the portion was probably the weakest of my video, but I was having a hard time imagining creative ways to sort of present the history of VTS with images that I don't have on hand personally. Things I would do differently next time is record audio on one device, or not necessarily device, but one software program. I'm not an audio engineer, and it was difficult for me to get the levels correct. Also doing it in one setting. I think there's one portion of the video where I had a window open, and in retrospect, I could hear a car going by in the recording, but I didn't like the way it was flowing. I couldn't re-record it at the end of this. So that summarizes my reflection. I think this was a really great experience. I guess going into it, I thought it would be quicker and easier and pretty tech savvy, but it did take some time to learn the tools, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity of learning them in such a hands-on manner. So thanks, Trent and Eli, and have a nice evening.